Hello everyone and welcome. First of all, I just want to introduce ourselves. So my name is Megan and this is Rachel. We are community pharmacists and we've been practicing for the last number of years. And I guess one thing that we've noticed throughout the practice is that obviously our role revolves around dispensing tablets to solve health conditions. And I guess the people that we see, often their disease states have quite progressed to the point that they're on prescribed medication. And one of the things Rachel and I have talked about on numerous occasions is that a lot can be done in terms of prevention, and we've decided to start channeling some of our energy back into the community to address some of the preventative measures that can be done. And one of the ones we're going to look at today is really around taking excellent care of the body, the human body, and we're going to dig deep into burnout. So to kick us off, Rachel is going to start on why are we burning out?
Thank you, Megan. So burnout is actually recognised in the International Classification of Diseases as an occupational phenomenon. So it's a result of chronic workplace stress that hasn't been successfully managed. And it's characterised by a number of behavioural, emotional and physical signs and symptoms that Megan's going to touch on in a moment. But before that, I'd like to take a minute to look at why we're burning out. Why is this such a phenomenon in today's society? Why are we chronically stressed? And generally, it seems to stem from our job. And by job, I don't only mean traditional paid jobs. I include stay-at-home moms and those of you that are caring for a family member at home in that. So lack of job quality is an issue. Overworking in your job, doing too many hours, taking on too many tasks, both inside and outside the workplace, not having boundaries, not managing our time effectively. Lack of autonomy in work, so feeling like you've no control and are completely subservient to your boss, not feeling rewarded or recognized in the workplace, poor relationships and communication with your colleagues and your employer. Lack of flexibility in your job is a huge problem. I see it from working moms that maybe are pharmacists with me, and if a baby or a child is sick, the pharmacy has to close with no pharmacist, so it's a huge issue for them. And it's especially an issue if they don't have the support system that they need outside of work and inside of work. A poor work-life balance is also leading to chronic stress, not taking time out to do the things that you enjoy, particularly spending time with loved ones. And also perfectionism. So we're all suffering, and especially women do suffer from this superhero syndrome where we want to do everything, we want to do it perfectly, and this can lead to burnout. So all of this job stress causes us to neglect our physical health. We abandon our healthy diet, our exercise and our sleep routines, and then stress and anxiety builds up and builds up. We try to push through it all until we eventually crash and burn out. And now Megan is going to talk through some of the signs and symptoms of burnout.
Thanks, Rachel. And really, like you mentioned, it's the chronic stress building up that then manifests as burnout. And it's more common than we think. A lot of people have actually experienced burnout. I know I've experienced it myself on a couple of occasions, and it's a gradual process. So like that, it adds up. It doesn't just happen overnight, but sometimes it can appear like that because we're so busy and all of a sudden we're feeling overwhelmed. So catching the early signs and symptoms is great because if those red flags are addressed, we can kind of course correct before it becomes a full major breakdown. But ignoring those signs can and does lead to burnout. So really, it's often recognized after it's happened, and it does take a good bit of self-observation to catch it in time, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go along. But first of all, we're going to talk about the signs and symptoms. So it manifests in emotional symptoms, physical symptoms, and mental exhaustion. So, and again, it's overall just about being overwhelmed with the schedule that we have, whether it's work, life, commitments, everything. And it's this trying to keep up with an unreasonable system that makes us feel overwhelmed. So just as well, I want to note that there are some days, you know, that everybody does feel like it takes an effort of Hercules to get up in the morning, and that can happen from time to time. That's not necessarily burnout. It's when this starts to happen a lot of the time or all the time that you're in the next phase. So physical symptoms, we have feeling tired and drained most of the time, lowered immunity, so you get coughs and colds very frequently, headaches, muscle pain. Burnout can often manifest as miscellaneous type of pains, that type of thing. Changes in appetite or sleep, digestion can also become upset. Then in terms of emotional symptoms, we have self-doubt, loss of motivation, even if it's something that you enjoy. If it's a job that you enjoy, sometimes the overwhelm tips the scale that we actually don't enjoy it as much. Having a negative outlook and decreased satisfaction and sense of accomplishment. those are the emotional symptoms. Behavioral symptoms then, we can get very frustrated, or we can procrastinate and withdrawing from responsibilities. And again, it just goes back to just having way too much on and just feeling like very exhausted. So now, after all that doom and gloom, we want to note that this is going to be a positive health talk on things that you can do to prevent burnout and ways to treat it. So the first step is identifying it. You know, they say you can't get out of prison if you don't know you're in one. So to recognize where you are and just do a bit of self-awareness on that. So most of the talk today is going to be around prevention, but Rachel next is going to talk us through treating burnout if you or someone you know is already there.
Thank you, Megan. So one would hope that at some point during the pre-burnout stage, when we start experiencing the symptoms that Megan just discussed, that we might stop ourselves and take a break and make the lifestyle changes that we need to make before we reach final burnout. Or you'd hope that maybe a family member or a partner might stop us in our tracks, but high achieving perfectionists that are prone to burnout are very competent at putting on a front and putting on a smile and reassuring everybody that they're okay. If you do reach complete burnout, how do you recover? How do you pick yourself up after reaching this point of mental and physical exhaustion? Well, firstly, you need to take time out. You need to take the time and space that you need to rest. And this can be a bit of a process or a journey. It can take time. So take days or weeks off work if you need. Most people that have experienced burnout have reported that they sleep for long periods of time. Others have reported that taking a little holiday and getting away for a change of scenery helps. It depends on you and your scenario. But when you reach this burnout point, you absolutely have to put yourself first and make yourself your priority. You may have people to look after, your children, your parents, patients, students, employees, but you're no good to them if you're not healthy and happy. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first. So after taking time out, the second thing you need to do is to build a support system around you. So part of your recovery may include some quiet or solitary time, but you do need to have people there to help, because when you're burnt out, your energy levels and your mindset is low. So you will need assistance, and choose those people carefully. Choose people you trust, people who are positive, people who are good listeners, and people who won't judge. And then the third thing you need to do is to reflect and forward plan. So think back and write down, why are you burnt out? How did you get to this point? What signs did you miss that pointed towards burnout? It may be necessary to rethink your goals and your priorities at this stage. For example, if you're looking for a big promotion at work the following month, you might want to put it on the long finger and just focus on getting yourself healthy and happy again. And once you've reflected, you can put a self-care plan in place that will prevent burnout from occurring in the future. And in this next part of the talk, we're going to focus on what this self-care plan may include.
Great, thanks, Rachel. So next, we're going to dig into prevention, and this really revolves around two core aspects of self-care and having healthy self-boundaries around our time and around our energy. So self-care, and I just want to note on the self-care, sometimes people think that it's selfish, you know, to do all the self-care and you take all this time for me time, but actually it's selfless. And it's about when you actually really look after yourself, you're in more of a position to help other people anyway. So essentially it's selfless, and it also generates positive energy and helps us to be more productive. So it's really worthwhile, and it's about scheduling it into our busy lives and making it kind of a mandatory thing rather than an afterthought and such. And that can be tough, you know, especially if we're all the busy things and the commitments that we have. So minding yourself has a dual outcome of benefiting you, yourself, and those around you. There's a really interesting article that I read in a book called The 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And it's a chapter on treating yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. And he talks about considering what would be truly good for you. And he has a really interesting analogy in the book, and it caught my attention because it was about a prescription. So he goes on to discuss that, for example, 100 people are prescribed a medication, and a third of them won't ever fill the prescription. So they'll never actually get the medication. They'll never do anything. The prescription will go into the bin or into a safe place or wherever it'll go. And then a third of them might fill it, but they won't take the medication correctly. They might quit early, miss doses, or they might not take it at all. So they might go as far to us in the pharmacy, get the medication, and then it'll sit in a shelf or in a drawer, and nothing will happen to it. And then a third of people will take the medication. So he ponders, you know, what are the reasons for this inaction? And he says that it can be to do with multiple things: understanding the necessity of the medication, whatever it might be, the trust in the health advice, the circumstances, the time or the cost involved. But what's interesting is he goes on to say that imagine it's not for you, it's for your pet. And there's just as many reasons for inaction: the time, the money, the cost, the trust and the advice, etc. But what he found was that people really do care about their pets, and they're actually better at filling and properly administering prescription medication to their pets than to themselves. And he jokes then that, even from your pet's perspective, it isn't good, because obviously the pet's relying on you. So I don't actually have a pet myself, but this point really highlights for me a want in human nature that we're more prepared to take care of our dogs, cats, birds, whatever it might be, more so than our own human bodies. And it's about moving that back to that us ourselves, our own human body is our personal responsibility, and considering whether we're looking after ourselves as well as we could be. And he says that treating yourself like someone you're responsible for helping isn't always just about, doing things that make you feel happy maybe in the moment, whether it's binge eating sweets or binge watching stuff on Netflix. That, if we were our own child, essentially, there'd be limits set on the number of sweets and the time, the screen time, etc. So it's kind of going back to parenting ourselves. And I think sometimes we move from childhood to adulthood, and suddenly we are responsible for ourselves, but there's no kind of handover or anything. It's just you tag, you're it. So a couple of points on self-care that I want to talk about is just firstly around pause and taking time for yourself. So you can do this through a few different things. I'm going to talk about 4 options here. So the first one is reflection and journaling. And there's a lot of different thoughts on journaling, but it can be, you can adapt the practice to whatever works for you. It can just take a few minutes. And really it's about becoming more self-aware and writing down where you're at, where you're going, what approach you're doing, is it working? And, the goals, if you have your goals written down, and sometimes it's just about modifying the journey so that it's more enjoyable. So sometimes we think we'll be happy when we get to a goal and we're in this race to get there. But as soon as we get to that goal, we only set a new one. So it's about enjoying the process as best we can while moving towards the goals that we set for ourselves. So that's the first one, is journaling. Take some time, write it down, and you can really tease it out on paper. It becomes much more clear. The second one is meditation. Even 5 minutes a day, there's huge health benefits from this. There's physical benefits. It reduces blood pressure, enhances circulation, improved focus, concentration, productivity. And it helps us get back in tune with our bodies and get back in tune with what's really important, the moment and the journey. And, being happy in the now is a habit, and we just need to schedule in this quiet time for ourselves to relax the body and the mind. Next one I'm going to look at is breathing exercises. Breathing in deeply, holding the breath for a few seconds and breathing out slowly. That actually is a huge relaxation technique that's powerful for the body, because it's a natural process, and it's really a way of giving back to the body, especially when we've asked too much of it at times. And the last one I want to touch on, part 4, was on gratitude and making this a practice, because it can shift us more to a positivity bias, whereby we focus on the positive things. So if you're in a scenario of something at work and it's not really going the way that you'd expected, just taking a step back for a minute and just noticing the things you're grateful for, whether it's a colleague that was helpful for you, whether it was a nice breakfast, and just really tuning back into the things that are working. And that can help give us a lift. So healthy self-boundaries, again, this varies from person to person. It's about managing your values and putting some boundaries on them. And sometimes we have to set rules for ourselves that we follow, and to have the self-discipline to follow them, whether it's, not bringing work home from the office, or whether it's not working the weekends, or having a cut-off time for working on the laptop, whatever it might be. But it's about setting these rules for ourselves to preserve our energy long term, because realistically the goal is that we want to be performing at a high rate for a long time, decades to come. So we want to just keep an eye on the process and make sure that it's sustainable. So next we're going to look at another one of the key pillars for good long-term health, and that is exercise, and Rachel's going to talk us through that.
Thank you, Megan. And exercise has so many benefits for our health in so many ways, but to stay on theme for our talk today, I'm going to focus on how exercise can improve our mood, our energy levels and our cognitive function. And so firstly, exercise leads to the release of neurotransmitters in the brain, the happy chemicals and the happy hormones, dopamine, adrenaline, and serotonin. And the release of these chemicals leads to reduced stress and anxiety, which is one of the main contributors of burnout. And that's a good thing, because all anxiety does is it makes us tense up. And when we tense up, our attention narrows. It's harder to learn, harder to perform, leading to even more anxiety and frustration. One neurotransmitter in particular, dopamine, is strongly linked with motivation. So after exercising, we're highly charged, we're stimulated, we feel positive, we feel strong, and we're ready to get stuff done. So if you're looking to boost your mood before going to work, morning exercise is a great option. Having an alert brain as well in the workplace is becoming more and more important, because a lot of jobs now require thinking and problem-solving skills. And we're expected to take exams and work and engage in continuous professional development. And exercise has proven to enhance brain performance. And images of the brain, and they've done studies on this, has shown that the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain where learning and memorizing happens, actually gets bigger as we get fitter. So knowing that exercise lessens anxiety, increases output, all of which can reduce the risk of burnout, what to do? Well, many of us may not need to do anything. If you already exercise, the recommendation is 150 minutes a week. So that's 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And this exercise can be in the form of anything. So it can be running, walking, Zumba, cycling, something that breaks a sweat. So if you are getting less than the recommended 150 minutes a week, you can try and maybe increase it gradually. And you can vary the type of exercise that you do to mix it up. If you don't exercise at all, start even doing 1 day a week. Anything is better than nothing, and then build it up. A lot of people find that exercising with somebody or having a buddy might help to motivate you and make it more fun. But we often talk about exercise like it's this separate entity. It's like this tiresome job that you have to fit into the day. And although it is very good to do proper exercise in the conventional sense of the word, because it tends to get our heart pumping, really movement is key. So just don't sit as much, really, and move your body more. And you can be a bit creative with this, especially in the workplace. If everybody gets involved, you can get a timer 3 times a day during the day, and everybody jumps up and does 5 minutes of jumping jacks or stretches or something. A trick that I often do is if I'm waiting for like the kettle to boil or something like that, I'll start to do a little bit of exercise instead of just standing there waiting for it to boil. Or if people want stuff upstairs, I always offer to go upstairs to get it for them, so I could run up and down the stairs maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. So little ways like that every day over time actually make a little bit of a difference. And I'd like to finish on a quick note about yoga. So it's very vogue, yoga. It's very popular, and it should be, because it's so good for you. And with yoga, you get the benefits of exercise and movement and relaxation. And there is so much evidence backing yoga as the ultimate method of de-stressing. Now, I'm not a yoga guru, but I do practice an element of yoga that Megan actually mentioned, which is the deep breathing exercises. And I find it so helpful when I need to loosen up and calm myself down. And it's such a powerful tool because you can do it anywhere, anytime, and nobody really notices. I always use it sometimes in the pharmacy if I'm standing in the dispensary and I look out and I see a queue. Well, I don't see that anymore with social distancing, which is great, but I used to see a queue maybe of 20 people looking in at me waiting, and I would just use deep breathing just to calm myself down, and I'd be able to just power through. So it's a really very valuable tool. So that's everything I have to say about exercise, and coupled with the importance of exercise is the importance of hydration. So Megan is going to kick us off on all the water.
Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, the hydration factor, and this is so important for health in general and for energy levels. And again, all of these parts are interlinked. Like when you have good energy, you feel able to exercise, and you're hydrated, supports the joints, etc. So water is often dubbed the elixir of life, and with good reason. Literally every system in the body needs it to survive. And this point is really going to be about your awareness of your hydration level and on enhancing it where applicable. So I'm not necessarily going to tell everybody to drink more or less water. Like, it's just about seeing where you're at and seeing if you are hydrated enough. So we're going to look at the importance of it and some key ideas for enhancing hydration. So the benefits of being well hydrated, first up, things like it regulates the body temperature, keeps the joints supple, prevents infections, very important, especially nowadays, delivers nutrients to cells, keeps the organs functioning well. The liver and the kidneys need the water to clear out waste and toxins from our body. Water also helps with weight loss and maintaining a healthy goal weight because it helps manage the appetite. There's a phenomenon called the hunger-thirst conundrum, and basically some of the symptoms of thirst and hunger are overlapping. So we can often eat when it's actually water the body is looking for. So to prevent this, by staying well hydrated, it actually just prevents that from happening because your body doesn't mix up the two. So other things that it can do is improve sleep quality, cognition, mood, and enhance clear thinking. So this is important, especially for people with working from home and everything, just to keep the focus. So are you dehydrated? Some of the symptoms of dehydration are a bit vague: tiredness, dizziness, that type of thing. So the most definitive one is really the color of your urine. So there are charts that you can get online for this just to get the color profiles. But apart from first thing in the morning when it's more concentrated, the urine should be light in color. So that's really the most definitive way to see if you're dehydrated. So an interesting point on hydration is the difference between being dehydrated and being malhydrated. So malhydrated is where we're drinking fluids that either aren't hydrating us or they're actually dehydrating us. And it's a bit confusing because they're drinks. So sugary drinks like soft drinks and that, there's so much sugar in them and it actually takes water to digest sugar. So if you're drinking very sugary fruit juices or sugary fizzy drinks, that can actually dehydrate you. And sometimes people think, oh, it's a drink, but that's actually going against the hydration factor. So realistically, we want most of our daily fluid intake to come from water. They recommend about 8 glasses of water a day. I know for some people this can actually seem like a lot, especially if you're not an avid water drinker. And especially some people actually don't like the taste of water and different things like that. So just some simple tips is just playing around with the flavor or the texture. So you can add fruit to your water, a slice of cucumber, or you can go for like herbal teas and that, and just mix it up a bit just to try and make it more palatable and more realistic that you'll want to drink it. Another point I want to make is on caffeine. So that's one example of drinks, teas and coffees that can actually, while there's water in them, the caffeine side of it can lead to dehydration. And I'm not going to tell anyone to give up coffee, so I love coffee myself, but again, it's just about modifying our habits and seeing how much caffeine we're actually taking in every day. And another point on this is sometimes when we find ourselves reaching for multiple cups of coffee per day, it is also a sign of how much we're pushing ourselves and can be an indicator that we're going towards burnout in a way. So just to be mindful of that. One thing you can do that's relatively practical, if you get a coffee in a coffee shop every day, you can reduce from 2 shots to 1 shot of coffee, and your barista will help you out with that. And that you're still enjoying the process, but it's just that bit less caffeine. So 2 recommendations then on staying really well hydrated is to start your day off right. So having a glass of water ready beside your bed and drink it first thing in the morning. And that really helps wake up the brain, the organs, everything. And it's really important to start the day off right, because with busy mornings and rushing to and from work, etc., you know, it could nearly be 11 before you even think about drinking a glass of water. So having that glass first thing when you wake up really just sets the day up right. So it's about working your way up to good hydration, and on the other side of the scale, not overhydrating either. So the second recommendation is eating your water. And this is actually really interesting. There's a lot of foods that if they're over 90% water by weight, by eating them, you're actually taking in water. Now, it's not a replacement for drinking water, but it can add and benefit to your hydration factor. So foods like cucumber, iceberg lettuce, celery, they're all more than 95% water. So more than 95% of those foods are composed of water. So you're getting the water as you eat them. Things like tomatoes, bell peppers, etc. So a lot of the salad vegetables are quite water dense. And yeah, so basically incorporating those few little tips can really make a big difference, and you'll notice it in the energy and the clear thinking and the productivity. So on from that then, I mentioned that water helps with good sleep, and sleep is a big pillar of health, and Rachel's going to discuss that in more detail next.
Yeah, Megan, and when we think about our health, it's often the diet and the exercise that we really focus on, but one important pillar of health, as you said, is that's completely underestimated is sleep. And it's so important in preventing burnout. And really, adults need at least 7 hours of sleep every night, but preferably 8. And teenagers need at least 8, but preferably 9 hours of sleep every night. And most of us aren't getting that. Back in 1942, the average person was sleeping for just under 8 hours, so 7.9 hours. And now the average is 6 hours and 30 minutes. So our sleep time has decreased by 20% in a very short period of time. Sleep can sometimes be associated with being lazy or being precious or being unproductive, but the truth is, to live a full and healthy life, we need our sleep. And certainly to avoid burnout, adequate sleep is essential. Obviously, it gives us a chance to rest our body and mind so that we're recharged for the next day. It also has a profound effect on our physical health. Our immune system suffers if we don't get enough sleep, and it has been shown that immune cells, called natural killer cells that help to fight off infection and illness, are less active in people that get 4 hours of sleep or less every night. And that's really important these days when we're trying to fight off every type of infection and virus that's going. Lack of sleep reduces the amount of testosterone in both men and women and can interfere with the reproductive system. The other aspect of our health that sleep can affect is our weight. So when you think of when you had a bad night's sleep, do you ever have the energy to go out for your walk or go out for your run or go to the exercise class? You generally don't, and you always tend to go for the bad. You tend to go for buns and chocolates and chips and all that kind of thing, and you ignore the salads and the veg and the fish and the fruit. And this is for two reasons. Number one, lack of sleep leads to the release of a hormone called ghrelin, which leads to an increase in appetite. And number two, because our mental faculties, like our decision-making skills, our focus and our discipline, aren't as sharp when we haven't had enough sleep. So we just don't bother thinking about exercise or thinking about healthy eating. This effect that sleep or lack of it has on our brain function is probably of interest to you here listening today. And the truth is that during really deep stages of sleep, there is a lot of brain processing going on, and short-term memories are being shifted into long-term memories. And you don't achieve this memory consolidation if you don't get the required amount of sleep. And a lot of tests and experiments have been done to test the effect of sleep on cognitive function the next day, and all the results show that lack of sleep impairs our ability to learn new facts and solve problems. And when our ability to solve problems and think rationally is impaired, this can then lead to one of the major contributors of burnout, and that's anxiety. And lack of sleep is closely linked with mental illnesses like anxiety and depression. And there is a particularly strong connection between lack of sleep and paranoia. So after all that information, you might all want to get a little bit of extra sleep, and that may or may not be a problem for you. So I've just put together a few tips on how to improve our sleep. So the first thing to do is to set a really good bedtime routine. So go to bed and get up at the same time every day, including the weekends, and avoid naps during the day. Avoid caffeine, so coffee, tea, caffeinated drinks and chocolate before bedtime. Try and drink your coffee before noon. Caffeine actually has a half-life of about 5 to 6 hours. So if you were to drink a cup of coffee at noon, at 6 o'clock, half of that caffeine could still be in your body, and by midnight, a quarter of it could still be in your body. So it's like drinking a quarter of a cup of coffee at midnight. So the earlier you drink your coffee, the better for your sleep quality. Keep the bedroom around 18 degrees Celsius. Have the room as dark as you can. So keep the lights dim about a half an hour before going to bed, and try and keep away from laptops, phones and iPads, because bright lights, including the blue light on all those devices, can inhibit the release of melatonin, which is an important sleep producing hormone. Set the scene in the bedroom, declutter it, make it nice and organized so that it's inviting. Don't go to sleep until you're sleepy. And if you go to bed and you're not sleeping, don't just lie there, get up, do something, read a book. And when you're starting to feel a bit sleepy again, go back to bed. Try meditation and deep breathing as well before you go to bed, or even during the day. Even if you're doing it in the afternoon, your meditation during the afternoon, it can start to slow down your nervous system, and that will help you get a better sleep that night. So that's all I have to say about sleep. We're going to move on to a little bit of nutrition now. Megan's going to talk to us about balanced eating.
Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, so clean, balanced eating and really whole foods is so important for preventing burnout. And again, it goes back to the work days, or whether you're working or studying, like the day can range anything from 6 to 12 hours plus. So it's really more of a marathon than a sprint. And we want to understand that and then reflect that in our eating habits. So we're going to aim for sustainable, slow release foods with holding powers that bring us through the long days. So again, going back to sugary foods, like this works against us in a marathon because it spikes the blood sugar and then is a drop. So it can actually affect our thinking power and our stress levels. And as well as that, you know, we're going to focus on sustainability, and that comes back to meeting the needs of the present you without compromising the ability of the future you. So it's okay to have some sugars, especially fruit sugars, a piece of fruit, but also to balance it with something more substantial, some protein or some complex carbohydrates, just to get a nice graph on that. So we're going for small balanced meals often. The brain as well needs glucose to function. So you don't want too little food either, because that breaks the concentration. And if you eat too much or too heavy foods, especially during the day, it can give rise to sluggishness, and that can affect our performance. So again, it goes back to really looking at what you're eating and to listen to your body. So what lunches do you eat that you find you have good concentration in the evening and that hold you through to the evening, or what ones are leaving you hungry, too hungry for your dinner? So, and as well as that, slow release foods actually can curb anxiety as well. So it's really important for that as well. So then just some notes on sustainability of your food plan. So food preparation and food shopping, we're going to look at that. And again, it's about brainstorming and trialing what works for you. Usually it's a good idea before you do a food shop to sit down and do a food menu with a meal plan and a snack plan for the 5 days or a week ahead, and make it realistic and that's something that will work for you. And again, having the plan makes it easier to stick to it. So this can save money, reduce waste, and improve health overall. Another really important point as well about food shopping, especially in today's world, a lot of us are working from home, is that, you know, not to buy foods that we don't want to be eating. So sugary snacks, cakes, biscuits. I know when you're sitting here at a desk beside a kitchen all day, it can be very tempting to go in and see what's there. So it's just so much easier if you leave it in the food store and don't bring it home. So the last point that I want to make on the topic of eating is, are you actually hungry, or is it just that we're craving a break? And sometimes it's the differentiation between true hunger or boredom, frustration, worry, desire for a kind of a justified break. And the ability to distinguish is very powerful. There's a quote I like, and it says, you know, if hunger isn't the problem, food isn't the answer. And we all need a break. So setting yourself up well for the day can also, you can include a few justified breaks. And this is especially important for desk work where you're sitting there all day. So some examples include getting up and doing a few stretches, going around, walking around the building, or walking out to your car and back, watching a short motivational video, maybe doing some jumping jacks, having a few board snacks. So this can be very good. Like if you have a few low calorie, high nutrient snacks, such as chopped vegetables, this can help you differentiate whether you're actually hungry or if you just want something to munch on. And again, sometimes as well, like I mentioned, there is a change and a shift in the way we work, and people can get a bit of cabin fever sitting in your house in a room all day, every day. So if you have the option, it can be nice every once in a while, especially if you work on a laptop, to move and do a little bit of work in a different area of the house and just prevent that cabin fever from setting in. So those are some notes on food. And again, it's just about creating a system for yourself going forward that's sustainable, both in the quality of the foods that you eat and also the planning and the organizing, food shopping, etc. So on from there then, Rachel, that's just a general food overview, and Rachel's going to dig into some superfoods and some supplements next.
Thank you, Megan. I'm not going to spend too long on this because we all know what foods are good for us and what are bad for us, but I'm just going to list some foods that are particularly good for our energy and concentration, which can help us to stay healthy and on top of our game in our busy working lives. So the first one I'm going to start with is berries, because they're probably the easiest to incorporate into our diet because we all like them. So all of the berries, blackberries, strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, and they're rich in flavonoids, and they have been shown to improve brain function. Vitamin B as well is a really important vitamin for release of energy and concentration, and you can get vitamin B a lot in the green leaf veg, so cabbage, broccoli, spinach. You also get it in potatoes, whole grains, chicken and beef. And vitamin E is usually known as the beauty vitamin, and you get that in green veg and good oils and nuts and stuff, but it's also very good for our brain cells. So to break that down, basically try and eat more nuts, berries, green veg and whole grains. They're probably the food types that are rich in the important vitamins that a lot of us don't get enough of in our diet. So maybe small changes, swap sweets for berries, have green veg twice a week if you're not having any at all, swap rice or pasta for brown rice or quinoa, slowly make a few little replacements. And the good news is a lot of the food that's good for your brain is also very good for your immune system. So all those foods that I spoke about, the nuts, the green veg, the whole grains, because they contain the micronutrients zinc, selenium, and copper, which play a really important role in our immune system. I'd also like to mention some other foods very good for our immune system. The citrus fruits, oranges especially, very good because they're full of vitamin C. Carrots and peppers have beta carotene, which boosts the immune system. And yogurts enhance the immune system as well. And with yogurts, try and get the low sugar variety. And I recommend live whole yogurts. Live yogurts because they contain the good bacteria, which helps with our gut health. And whole yogurts because they help us feel fuller for longer. I'm just going to have a quick look at some supplements. I'm going to keep this very simple and very basic. A lot of people, when they come into the pharmacy, they're bamboozled by all the different supplements. And they vary in content and price. And the one that you go for depends on your health status and diet. So always ask your pharmacist before you go buying your supplements, especially if you're on other medication. So if you're just trying to give your immune system a boost, keep the colds and flus and whatever else away, the vitamin C and zinc is very good. So that's just a very simple one, just basic. I'm just also going to mention vitamin D, how important it is in the winter, especially in Ireland at the minute, because we're not getting enough sun. So I would invest in a vitamin D supplement if you can. So that's our vitamin C, zinc, and vitamin D. Baraka Boost is another one that we all are quite familiar with. It has the vitamin C, the zinc, and the vitamin B in it. But there is also caffeine in Baraka Boost, and I don't think nutritionists are cracked about that product because there is a good bit of sugar. Now, sometimes I find if I'm having a really hard day in work, I do take the old Baraka Boost just for a pep. But I don't know if I go with that every single day as your, general multivitamin. Then if you want a good, just complete multivitamin, pretty basic, very good value, the Centrum, especially the Centrum Advanced, is very good. It has the vitamins, minerals, and micronutrients that you need in there. That's very good. I think they're definitely, I think about €7 or €8. They're not very expensive. To up it a little bit more, you have the Pharmatin that has got ginseng in it, very good for concentration and very good for fatigue. Everything plus ginseng in the Pharmatin. Then the Vivioptil is a product that I quite like. This is a German product. And what is extra in the Vivioptil is it's got 3 things that are extra that you wouldn't find, say, in your other multivitamins. Well, the basic version anyway. You've got lecithin, which is very good for keeping your cholesterol balanced. It keeps your bad cholesterol low and your good cholesterol high. So that's a very good one. It's got the inositol, and inositol is very good, has been shown to be good for balancing the chemicals in our brain, so the kind of hormones and neurotransmitters in our brain. And then you also have rutin, which is very good for our circulation. So that's quite a nice product, the Vivioptil. And then we have the Revive. So if you were really trying to invest in something good, the Revives are really, really good. I find them great. My favorite multivitamin that I would take every day is the Revive Active, and what this is particularly good for is your energy. I find with the Revive Active, it's when I stop it that I really notice my energy levels dipping a little bit, and it's got something called coenzyme Q10, and it's got a good dose, I think 150 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 in it, which helps to release energy from food. And although it is expensive, it is quite good value when you break it down, because to get a coenzyme Q10 on its own and all the other things that are in the Revive would actually cost quite a bit when you add it all up individually. So that's the Revive Active. The Revive Zest then is also good. It doesn't have the coenzyme Q10 in it, but it does have a good dose of lysine in it, which is very good for people that are prone to breaking out in cold sores when they're run down. So that's the Zest. And then just for anybody that was maybe looking for a boost in their cognitive function, if there was exams or anything coming up, you have the Mastermind. And the Mastermind is full of the vitamin Bs and omegas, really, really good for your concentration, makes you quite alert. Always take it in the morning. Megan, you always find that it makes you quite alert, don't you? You're
yeah, the first time, Rachel, I ever took that, I took it one evening in work about maybe 6 o'clock. I was working late and I didn't sleep a wink. So yeah, early in the day, it's good for all those B vitamins.
Early in the day, yeah. Exactly. And you Mastermind with your regular Revive or with another regular multivitamin if you like. It doesn't interact, which is good. And that's it. And sometimes what we might find with the multivitamins is maybe in the winter months or whatever, we might need a full month of taking it, and then we can reduce it maybe down to 2 or 3 times a week just to keep us topped up. So that's everything that I have to say about the multivitamins. Now I think we're kind of going to finish on our really kind of our nice, pleasant notes. So Megan is going to talk to us a bit about just general lifestyle tips.
Yeah, so a couple of really interesting concepts in terms of just being aware of them for preventing burnout. So the two that I'm going to look at first are decision fatigue and choice anxiety. So we'll start with decision fatigue, and that really describes how people struggle with their choices after making a lot of them in a given day. And it's nearly as if our ability to make good choices tires with use. So we see towards the end of the day that there can be some lesser decisions being made then, and a decline in the quality of our decisions. And that explains why towards the end of the evening, we start to look for what they call decision shortcuts. And the two most followed ones are either A, acting kind of recklessly or impulsively, whether it's impulsively online shopping or suddenly going to get takeaway when you had a good healthy dinner prepped. Or the other one that can happen is we can duck a decision and do nothing. So it's just to be aware of that. And the people with the best self-control, they kind of structure their days so that they conserve their willpower or decision-making power. And this can be done by setting your day up right to preserve some of that mental energy for making great decisions throughout the day and the evening. So one simple thing to do for this is just to look at your morning routine and just to look at how many decisions you have to make, whether it's your outfit, your breakfast, you know, what time you're going to leave at, like all those things add up. And if any of them, if we can streamline them the night before, that can be really helpful in terms of preserving our willpower. So checklists are great as well. Checklists really relieve cognitive pressure by getting a lot of your to-dos down on paper. You can just read them then. You don't have to hold it all in your mind. And that can also help enhance sleep quality as well. So making decisions, hard decisions in the morning when you're fresh, and doing some of the more complex work first thing in the morning can be really helpful. The other thing that I want to, on the other point on that as well, is forget the snooze button. And they say that that uses up a few decisions in and of itself. Now, I'm guilty of that at times as well. But yeah, your multiple decisions, will I or won't I get up? You know, and again, it all starts to add up. So the second point I want to talk about is choice anxiety. And quite simply, this is stress and anxiety that arises from having too many choices to pick from. And it's a real thing. It's so real that in 2015, Tesco actually reduced its range of products from 90,000 down to 60,000. And this was aimed to help customers improve their shopping experience and reduce the stress of choice. And it's just very interesting to note that like having all these choices doesn't necessarily make us more happy. If anything, it makes us a bit more unsettled. And another way we can combat choice anxiety is kind of reducing some of the need to make choices throughout the day. And again, it goes back to having routines and structure. And the last lifestyle point that I want to make is about minimalism. So this is really when you cut down on some of the clutter and some of the unnecessary possessions that we have. And I don't know about in Ireland, but I was looking up some data, and the average US household has about 300,000 things. Like that's, I don't know about how much you have, but like that's a lot of stuff. And look at, I have a lot of clutter as well. I'm gradually trying to reduce it down, but it's not about being extreme, but it's just about reducing all the stuff that we look at every day and have to tidy and dust and everything like that, and redistributing some of the unnecessary stuff, because you might have things sitting in your house that you're not using that somebody else would really value. So really take a good look around the house and ask yourself, you know, in the last 6 months to a year, did you get value or joy out of the item? And if it's no to both, then you can consider moving it along. And this actually gives us time back. So there's reduced time that's spent doing chores. So I'm a reforming messy person myself, and I've realized that I don't really enjoy tidying. So I've decided to streamline the environments a bit, and that has actually really saved me time and gained me some time back that I can use to spend in other things such as self-care. So I'm sure you probably all heard of Marie Kondo. She has her own method, and again, it's about doing a method that suits you. I like to do it slowly over time. I don't like to get overwhelmed. I think this is the same for a lot of people who are sentimental. So doing it in stages is great, whether it's a drawer or a cabinet or a press piece at a time, and it actually really changes the energy. So it's a really important thing to do. And they say that we have to actually control the flow of things that come into our home, because if we don't make a conscious decision to decide if we want what we want to keep, our default is to keep everything, and then it just ends up adding up over time. So just another piece on that, if you are finding that you're very sentimental, you have a lot of clutter and you're finding it hard to let go of that, one tip that I used myself actually when I was decluttering was that I took a photo of the item. So a lot of times it might be a jumper that you remember wearing on a holiday that you enjoyed, and like you don't necessarily want or need the jumper, but you like the idea that it provokes the memory. So by taking a photo of it, that actually really achieves the same feat. So that's just a little tip from me to you. So those are just some other miscellaneous category things for preventing burnout. And to finish up this talk today, Rachel is going to discuss some ideas about really enjoying our life and bringing it back to what's important.
Thanks, Megan. Yeah, so enjoying our life. So the first thing that I would focus on if you're trying to enjoy life is nature. So I'm a big nature girl. I love being outdoors. And Florence Nightingale used to always say that after a closed room, what hurts patients most is a dark room. So she was a big believer in using light and sunlight for recovery. And research has shown that being able to see the sky and the trees and hearing birds and being outside and being in contact with nature soothes us and helps our mental health. And exposure to nature has been shown to have a positive impact on our emotional well-being. And we don't spend as much time now in forests, fields, or under natural skies. Many of us live in cities or suburbs or built-up areas, and even those of us that live out in the countryside, we spend a lot of time indoors. So we do need to make, I suppose, a more conscious decision to immerse ourselves in nature more, whether it's just doing a run in a park or bringing your dog for a run in the forest instead of going to the gym, or even just eating your breakfast outside, because the greens and blues of nature really calm us down and help us to zoom out and realize there's a lot more to the world than your job. Having a creative outlet is actually very important too, because many of us, I know certainly myself as a pharmacist, we're in a job that requires a lot of logical thinking and a lot of left brain activities. But engaging in a creative activity allows you to use the right side of your brain, which is the creative side of your brain, and that relaxes you and helps you to forget about things. Everybody is creative. I used to always just have this idea that I'm a pharmacist and I'm very sciencey and I'm not creative, but we're all creative. So, you know, you can revisit an old hobby or pick up a new one, like a musical instrument, painting, writing, cooking, baking, dressmaking, whatever it is. Just don't get too competitive about it and create another stressor in your life. Just let yourself go and have fun with it. Making more time for family is very important now. Sometimes maybe nowadays we're spending a lot more time with our family than we ever thought we would, or some people are spending even less because we're apart because of COVID. It really just depends, but it is most people's priority, and a lot of people wished for more time, and it's a lot of dying people's regret is that they didn't spend as much time as they would have liked to with their family. So make time for your family and friends and do things together, spend quality time together, do the things that I just mentioned, going out for walks in nature, being creative, etc., because they're the really pure happy moments that will boost your well-being. And then the last point I want to make is on a digital detox, and this is probably more important now than ever because we're living in such a digital landscape now, and it's really important to try and stay human and spend time in the real world. I'm a big fan of digital detoxing, and I know they would have had all these weekends, these digital detoxing weekends out in mountains where there was no phone signal anyway. That's not really an option anymore, but you can simply digital detox, even if it means that you turn off all laptops and all devices for an hour every night, or if you have Sunday as your no digital time day, whatever it is, just to switch off, especially now with the constant negative news feeds and everything. You want to just switch off and just forget about it all. So I think that's really, really important. And that's it. And I suppose one point that I will make is that one of the reasons for us burning out, I think, more regularly now than before is that the rate of change, things in 2020, 2021 are changing so quickly. They say in the last 10 years that the rate of change has just increased so much. I mean, everything changes, obviously, change is a constant and it's usually good, but now it's just changing everything, especially with technology. It's changing so quickly that we're all struggling a bit to keep up. So don't feel bad if you need to slow down. So that's everything that I think we have to say today about burnout, Megan. We hope you enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's just about looking at all the other factors that contribute to a healthy life and a happy life. And a lot of the factors that prevent burnout also enhance contentment. So yeah. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We hope you all got some nice points out there that you can apply in your own life. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Thank you.